Hello again and welcome, and you've reached part 11 of our series of 66 short podcasts covering the 66 books of the Bible. So at this point we've reached the book called 1 Kings, the book of the division of the kingdom of God. Like 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, 1 and 2 Kings was originally one volume also. The two books of Kings carry on the history of Israel from where the book of Samuel left off. They cover a period of about 4 centuries, from the closing years of David's reign to the time the people are taken into captivity in Babylon. They describe the division of the kingdom into two, and then the history and decline and fall of those two separate kingdoms. The author is technically unknown. The Talmud contends that Jeremiah wrote it, and there is evidence to indicate that is the case. Firstly, there's linguistic similarities between Kings and Jeremiah. Both have a similar view of history, and both have a strong preference for phrases from the Pentateuch, and both make reference to earlier prophets. As with the book of Joshua, Judges, and Samuel, the two Book of Kings have been written as what is called a prophetic history. Although they are historical, the author's main concern was not merely just to record events, but to show the meaning of those events in the purposes of God. 1 Kings covers a period of about 123 years from the death of David to the death of Jehoshaphat. The generation that received it were those living after Jehoshaphat. Most of it was compiled by a temporary of Jeremiah, or many believe by Jeremiah himself. However, the book was not finished until the beginning of the captivity. The subject is the division of the kingdom. A faltering King David is found in his palace, surrounded by scheming and maneuvering. David is seen to choose his son Solomon to succeed him, and at the outset Solomon is promising. But later he develops divided loyalties, and ultimately not only the monarchy but the kingdom is divided. The division is then traced through its successive kings in both this book and in the up-and-coming 2 Kings. The kings of the north and the south, they separate, and as they do so the monarchy begins to decay at the core. In doing so, it reveals the history of how Israel went from being a united kingdom to a nation in captivity. The author is reminding the children of Israel in captivity of very important spiritual truths. The structure of 1 Kings hangs together on its chronology. Because its concern is to see the meaning of Israel's history explained, the writer does not record all the events of any one era in its entirety at the same level of detail across the whole range. Rather, he selects and arranges his material according to their religious meaning rather than their political significance. So the book in total divides into 2 main parts. Section 1, the first 11 chapters, deal with the United Kingdom and the reign of Solomon. Chapter 12 through to the end of the book covers the divided kingdom, the reign of the kings, one after the other, and the various levels of decline and decay. Thinking about the purpose, why was this book written? Well, 1 King gives an account of the reign of the kings, as I said, from Solomon to Jehoshaphat, and it records the division of the kingdom. It was written by a prophet to give us God's point of view in what is actually happening. In other words, in both here 1 Kings and 2 Kings, they're not just recorded history, but they're rather to attempt to show us history from God's point of view. It evaluates each of the kings of the divided kingdom, and each king is assessed individually. The author uses the voice of the prophet throughout the book to judge sin, which we will see later will reach its climax in the time of Elijah. So to sum up this book in just a short sentence, an unknown author, probably Jeremiah, wrote to the children of Israel around about the time of the Babylonian captivity to remind them that a divided heart that was first seen in Solomon led to the very division of the kingdom. In other words, one sin leads to another, and sin will always lead to decline and division.